This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 251, recorded January 23rd, 2014. Good news for AMD, Intel, and OCZ.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 251, recorded January 23rd, 2014. Good news for AMD, Intel, and OCZ.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by iFixit. You can fix it, and iFixit makes it easy with step-by-step repair guides, high-quality replacement parts, and all the tools you'll need. For $10 off your purchase of $50 or more, go to ifixit.com/twit and enter the code TWITCH at checkout.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm your host, Patrick Norton, joined as always by Mr. Ryan Shrout, back from epic travels in the Southlands. Mr. Ryan Shrout, are you ready to talk about the best hardware of 2013 as selected by the editorial excellence that is known as the PCPer.com staff?
Yeah, I guess the southern lands would be southern to you. They're mostly west to me. I guess they're also south, but they're mostly west.
Well, the Southlands to me, the West, your great journey of golfing excellence and drinking mayhem. Did you get arrested?
No, I didn't get arrested. I didn't realize in downtown San Diego exactly how close I was to Mexico.
It's just right there.
It's like 9 miles or something like that. Yeah. You know, like you can take a bus, like just a city bus, and get dropped off on the border.
And walk across to San Ysidro and go into Tijuana and get your mayhem on. Some superior fine dining is now available in Tijuana.
I really wanted to, like, I had my passport with me. I just wanted to go step across and be like, oh, okay, that was great. I've been to Tijuana, and then go back. But 2 of the 5 people in our group did not have their passport with them, so we decided not to risk it.
You should come to Mexico with me. Next time I go down for the Baja 1000 or something, you should come with.
That would be fun.
I think you would enjoy that experience.
Yeah.
Probably won't be a lot of time in Tijuana, but I guarantee you a lot of mayhem and a lot of cactus. So 2013, an exciting year in hardware. PCPer sits down basically. Is this the second annual best hardware selection?
You know, it's a weird thing. Like, I don't know what made me decide to want to do this. I guess, like, I follow a lot of, like, video game podcasts and websites and review sites. It's like they always have these cool, 10 best of the year lists or best of the year lists. And I was like, we need to do that for hardware. And we sat down and we tried to think about what are the criteria that they need to meet, and are we going to do this based on price schemes? And I kind of made an executive decision, and I said, you know what? Nope, we're just going to do it. And we're just going to call it best hardware. And we're just going to sit on our podcast and yell at each other until we figure out which one is, like, the best. And it could be an expensive one or a cheap one. It could be a low power one or a high performance unit and stuff like that. That's why you'll get weird things where best GPU is a super high end card, but the best processor is actually a low end processor, things like that.
So should we start with the high end or the low end processor?
Let's start on the high-end side of things, I guess. We'll just kind of go down the order, like the best graphics card of 2013. It was an interesting debate we had on this one because AMD's R9 290 would have been probably the best card of the year had it not had such a troubled launch period, right, with its kind of cruddy reference coolers. And if you could buy it today at the price you were supposed to be able to buy it at. That was kind of like the two big headaches, right? So if it were available at MSRP with its non-reference cooling solutions that were available in December, then I think that would have made the list. As it did not, neither did the R9 290X. We ended up going with the GTX 780 with its price drop as the best GPU of the year. Definitely a high-end option, but probably the place where I'd say the biggest shakeup occurred in the GPU market for 2013. But on the processor side, you mentioned that, like on the low end, you had Ivy Bridge E come out. You've had Haswell release. Wasn't really a whole lot from AMD. The Kaveri APU was actually in just last week or so. So we actually went with a somewhat of a surprise, the Intel Bay Trail SoC, right? So the Bay Trail processor, that's their low end new Atom line of processors. With actually the runner up of the Apple A7 SoC. I mean, it really came down to the Ivy Bridge E was very iterative, super high performance. But if you had Sandy Bridge E, there's no need to upgrade. There's nothing dramatically improved on that. Same thing with Haswell, right? If you already have Ivy Bridge or even Sandy Bridge, there's really no need to upgrade your processor. And unfortunately, you can't really upgrade on the Atom side of things. But if you had a system that had the previous generation Atom Z2500 series, I guess it was, or something like that, then moving to a Bay Trail unit, you would definitely see a difference in performance and in battery life and in overall system usability, right? And I came away pretty impressed with my time with it, with that Asus T100 convertible notebook and tablet based on Bay Trail. It was pretty cool. Storage, it's like SSDs didn't have a whole lot to not a whole lot to happen this year. The 840 Evo kind of won it almost by default. It had the biggest price drop. You can consistently buy 1 terabyte Samsung 840 Evo SSDs for under $500 now. I saw them on sale on eBay for like $479. They're on Amazon for like $509 a lot of times, and they are solid performers. They're TLC flash, so they're triple level cell. So some people might see that as a negative, but Alan keeps telling me over and over again that it's not. It's going to survive any kind of write issues. It's very fast on writes up until a certain level, but most people will never ever meet that level of like cacheable writes.
Right.
So it's funny. We have like an Amazon affiliate code or whatever that's just on the site, and every day or every week we get like a report of what's sold, and by far the most frequently sold item of anything, processor, graphics, motherboard, whatever, is the Samsung 840 Evos. So they must be doing pretty well for them as well. Corsair, the case was a hard one. Like there's so many different cases out there. We've talked about the Corsair Carbide Air 540 quite a bit on the show. I think we kind of was like, you can see like the winner is that, or whatever else best suits your needs, because they are so, I don't know, how would we word that? They're so independently preferenced, right? What you want is not necessarily what I
want. Orange. I want more colorful. I don't want a window in my case. I want all the windows in my cases. I want 240 millimeter radiator space. I want 120 millimeter. I want 3 fans. I want fan covers or removable fan covers. I mean, we could go on for days.
We could. Yeah, and that's why, like, if you go to like Newegg and go, show me all the computer cases, you're going to be looking for days at that stuff. Same thing could almost be said for motherboards. We ended up picking the Asus Maximus 6 Extreme just basically because it has like every possible feature. The overclocking on it is fantastic. It has that little external OC unit and monitoring unit that you can either put in a 5¼ inch bay or mount. It has a little kickstand that you can put up on your desk and watch things there. That's pretty impressive. The best price drop last year, this was SSDs. This year we went with 4K displays. And considering that you can get if you go with like the low end TVs that have 30 hertz refresh rates, you can get those for like $500 now, like the 39-inch Seiki 4K panels. Not amazing panels, but they're 4K and they'll run on your PC or in your home theater today at under $500. Even the Asus PQ321Q or the Sharp panel that are $3,400, $3,200 today. It was a year ago that those panels were $10,000 or $25,000. So I think I was pretty impressed with how far those 4K panels dropped.
It dropped all the way. I was kind of surprised by your pick for the best mobile device of 2013, the Asus Transformer T100. But you love the processor, you love the battery life.
Yeah, this is another one. It's like there's so many different options out there. We were looking at the iPad Air. We looked at the iPhone 5S. Then we have a ton of notebooks that we go through here as well. The problem is like nothing really stood out as being super revolutionary. Like the Yoga was actually a previous year 2012 kind of design. That we really like that design. Ultrabooks haven't really changed a whole lot. They didn't get like a whole lot thinner than they did in the year before that. And the Asus Transformer T100, you can get great performance. This is one of the few devices also that multiple people on the staff actually owned, and that kind of shows you something as well, that you can buy it for relatively cheap, $399, and you get a solid Windows 8 performance with it. It's like a standard x86 experience. You're not running Windows RT. You're not limited on the applications that you can run. And it's a tablet first with the dock that makes it a keyboard and makes it a full laptop. And I think that the price of it is really what sells it. And then the runner-up of the Google Nexus 7, the new 2013 edition there, is just a great, probably still my favorite tablet that you can buy. I think it's $229 or something like that. So Android or Windows or whatever. Still think that's my favorite tablet of last year.
It's a
best
really
trend,
nice piece of engineering.
Yeah, it is. It's just great hardware. The best trend was the x86 consoles, and then the worst trend is GPU shortage because of coin mining. And you can see the logo that Scott made there is indicative of his thoughts.
Scott called out the logo, and we did show off the logo last week because it was far too highly amusing to let go.
Yeah, so there was that. So that's kind of like our picks. And so if you want to go complain to us in the comments, you can do that. But it's kind of all in fun. And actually, if you listen, the podcast is linked at the top of that story. If you go listen to like the debate of how we came to these decisions, you may feel better about them than just reading the story.
I like the idea that you're justifying your decisions. Like, it's your picks. It's okay.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah, I know. It's all right.
So Lenovo Yoga Tablet 8 and Yoga Tablet 10. I mean, probably the simplest cap on this is Lenovo is trying to push design formats in no small part because there are about a bazillion 8-inch tablets out there. You know, if you've got a few $1,000s in a dream, you can basically walk into a shop in China and get a container of tablets shipped to your spec. And I was thinking about that the other day as I was walking through some small electronics chains and seeing that they each sort of had their own brand of tablet, which is obviously very specific to that retail outlet. You really like, though, you've really been liking what they've been doing with the Yoga tablets.
Yeah, so I had the 8 and the 10 here. I've got the 8 here with me right now. And this side of the tablet's relatively thin. It's not Nexus 7 thin, but it's pretty thin. And then obviously here you've kind of got that tube shape, right? And that's actually where the battery is stored. And that's one of the reasons that it can have such amazing battery life is that it has I think this has a 6,000 milliamp hour battery in this version of it. But it's also like a handy handhold, right? So you've got something to grip on. So if you've ever used a Nexus 7 and you hold it with one hand, anytime you try to hold something that's very thin for a long period of time, it usually causes like cramping in the hands, at least for me. So I like the kind of usability aspect that adds as well. And then since they had some space with that, they went ahead and included the little stand right there. And so it'll stand on a desk at a whole bunch of angles, really. It'll probably go back that far without falling. It's got front-facing speakers that I really liked on it. They sounded pretty good. It's got SD card slot in the back here as well. It's a really nice piece of hardware. The SoC in it is not fantastic. Performance on it is relatively low. We saw some reports in the comments that, hey, if you change the launcher from the default to it's a couple of these third-party options, that it actually improves the UI performance pretty dramatically. But I mean, you could watch videos, and I was browsing the internet and all that stuff. But if you're looking at gaming on a tablet, this may not be your best option. Its performance is kind of on par with the Tegra 3, which would be the 2012 version of the Nexus 7. I think the most interesting thing about this is still its battery life. When we did our web browsing battery test, I got almost 18 hours out of it, which is
pretty epic.
6 or 7 hours more than everybody else that we had tested, even like that Nexus 7. So there's a whole lot to like about it. And again, it's $199. It's actually cheaper than the Nexus 7 by about $30. Although, you know, it's a 1280 by 800 resolution screen. I mean, it's not a high quality in the specifications department, although it does feel like it's built really well. The 10-inch version of it, I'm not really as much a fan of. It's only $80 more, but the battery life is significantly lower. Screen resolution is the same, even though it's a bigger screen, so that's not very good.
Right.
You can definitely see the pixelation even on the icons on the desktop on this one. So,
Stick to
battery
the 8.
life. Yeah, stick with the 8 if you're going to get it. I mean, and it's not as comfortable to hold with one hand, and there's some other caveats that go along with it. But I think for $199, Lenovo has a pretty interesting product on their hand. I'd be curious to see how well they've sold. And even though reviews of it tended to be negative across the internet, again, because of the performance, it's a pretty old MediaTek SoC with quad-core A7 processors in it. You know, if people who actually are buying it and using it see a lot of the potential upsides. I don't. Do you agree with this? I get a lot of flack for this, Patrick. So this has front-facing speakers here, okay, and they're stereo. I think that is worlds better than any rear-facing or side-facing speaker configuration in a tablet. And most people seem, well, not most people, a couple of people I know say, yeah, I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't know what you would complain about with the rear-facing or side-facing speakers on devices. And to me, it's just like, doesn't it just make sense that the audio should be facing the direction of the screen as opposed to away from it?
One, yes, it does. I mean, firing the speaker into your lap is kind of silly, or firing the speaker into the seat back in front of you on the plane is kind of silly. I think a lot of people have no issue with rear firing speakers because they almost always use headphones or are engaging in activities where they don't actually have any audio. You know, I've had some really solid experiences with, you know, side throwing speakers, especially on laptops. But you know, the thing I was kind of wondering about, I think backfiring speakers are kind of silly. I think the fact that, you know, I'm holding a phone right here that has 2 speaker indentations in the bottom, but audio only comes out of 1 is kind of silly. But the, you know what I mean? And if you hold your hand up against it just right, you basically have no audio coming from the phone. I was also thinking, like, part of me was thinking is, you know, I like, you know, the $199 great price point for that, especially with the battery life. If you're just consuming simple media and stuff. What did you think about, you know, adding $60 to double the memory up to 32 gigabytes? Because for me, 16 gigabytes never seems to be enough on a phone or a tablet for data storage.
That's probably a pretty good deal, right? $60 for that. If you use your tablet for media in that fashion, that makes sense. I stream almost all of my music over Spotify, and I don't tend to have a lot of video with me, so I don't use, like, on my iPad Air or on my Nexus 5, I don't use a lot of actual local storage. I tend to not go with the lowest capacity option, though, just because of, by the time you take away operating system and applications you install and stuff like that, that it's you know, you kind of run out of space quicker than you might think. So you know, I think for $60 that makes sense to get 16 more gigs of space. But I think there is, I don't know if the only, are we talking about internal space? I'd have to look in here to see what capacity.
And then also, I mean, it does have the external, it does have the ability to add an external, you know,
SD card.
SD card. So there is that going on. Big story this week. OCZ technology is dead. Long live OCZ storage solutions. And of course, the review of the OCZ Vertex 460, a 240 gigabyte SSD. They're dead, but they're not dead. And there's a reason for that.
Hey, we know when you're going out of business, sometimes somebody picks you up and, you know, gets you up off your ass and back onto your feet. That's kind of what Toshiba did here. So Toshiba, as far as I know, and this may be something that I just have overlooked in the enterprise area, doesn't really have a presence in the SSD market, in the flash storage, like actually selling final products to people.
Right.
And so this is an interesting way for them to say, it's the case we didn't say, like, OCZ was purchased by Toshiba, and now they're called OCZ Storage Solutions, a Toshiba Group company. So they're going to keep the name. They have a new logo, but they're going to keep the name. And this allows Toshiba to do essentially what Samsung is doing today, right? So Samsung, they make the flash, and now they sell the drive, right, straight to consumers. And Toshiba will be able to do the same thing. Toshiba makes flash. They can use a OCZ IndyLinks controller. OCZ had that IP with them, so the barefoot controllers from IndyLinks are now part of Toshiba, and they have the OCZ retail brand to sell to consumers and to sell to OEMs. So now they have a whole vertical integration that they can go after the same markets. So, and the OCZ Vertex 460, it's obviously a product that was in development before this purchase took place. So this is probably not a true iteration of a vertical integration of a product, but it's got all the makings of it, right? So it's using an IndyLinks controller, it's using Toshiba flash, and it's an OCZ branded drive. You know, so there you go. It's the OCZ Vertex 460 is supposed to be a little bit slower than the Vertex 450, I believe. It's supposed to be a little bit slower clock, but it's using smaller flash, Toshiba 19 nanometer flash. Yeah, so a newer version of the Barefoot 3 controller, but with lower endurance spec and warranty period. So it is rated at a 20 gigabyte per day write capability for 3 years, which that number is so hard to quantify for people. Writing. So it's warranted to write 20 gigs per day to your drive for every day for 3 years. And 3 years doesn't maybe sound like a whole lot of time, but the chances of you writing 20 gigs of data to your drive once a day, like in one day, is pretty rare, right? Like I might do that here because I'll fire up a new system and I'm like, okay, we've got to copy all these games to it so I can use it for GPU testbed. And I might copy 150 gigs worth of game files to it. Right, or you install Battlefield 4 one day. Well, that's 22 gigs. So there's your 22 gigs of write. But how, are you installing a 22 gig install game every day?
If you are, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah, if you are, awesome for you. But some of the rest of us have to work, I guess. I don't know. In talking with Alan on our podcast last night,
runs gaming benchmarks for a living. I just want to throw that out there.
But that's not playing games. Trust me. Watching the same cycle of Battlefield 4 load leveling
just gets worse
and over. Yeah, it doesn't get better. And then when the game crashes, sometimes it's even worse. But you know, Alan was basically saying, look, this should not be a concern for a standard user. If you're going to put this into some kind of enterprise or you know, business environment that it's like servers and that kind of stuff, then you might be concerned about the wear leveling of this type of stuff. But otherwise, you should be good. Performance-wise, it did very well across the board. Excellent performance, excellent cost per gigabyte as well. If it is for sale at the MSRP, it's actually going to be on sale starting next week. And the pre-order prices we saw on Newegg are actually kind of right in line with what to expect. So the 240 gig version will be $190. And the 480 gig version will be $360. So a good offering. I don't know. At this point, Samsung has such momentum in the SSD market. I'd be curious to see what it takes to kind of maybe not even dethrone them, but kind of move them out of the way for even just a little bit. And OCZ will definitely have to do some repentance to the community, if you will, right? They need to build back up their name and their brand under the Toshiba market, right? So, you know, that means no more firmware issues. That means low cost and good support, right? Yeah. They need to be careful with that stuff.
I mean, part of it also is like at this point, I don't think we know whether or not OCZ Storage Solutions is going to be honoring OCZ technology warranties. I mean, I think they're going to have to if they're going to sort of maintain any presence in this community. But that's one of the things I keep seeing in sort of some of the comments and some of the people bouncing around online. It's like, is my drive still warranted?
I think it is for sure.
I'm also kind of hoping that they sit down and do some firmware updates for some of the models they've been ignoring for a while. That would be nice, to say the very least. Something I certainly wouldn't have predicted, although it's interesting, right? Intel sold off their their attempt to create an online television network to Verizon this week. Verizon's going to fold that into Fios. But the 2013 Intel financial results came out, and they're going to cut 5% of their workforce, which is a lot of people. And this is despite a solid fourth quarter. You know, what is it like? Scrolling down, $52.7 billion in total revenue, along with $12.3 billion operating and $9.6 billion net income. That is a big chunk of change. That said, it also it's basically you're talking about like a 13 to 16% drop in revenue. And quote, the PC client group had 2013 revenue of $33 billion, which was down 4% versus 2012, which is not a huge change. But apparently, Intel is going to cut approximately 5,000 jobs. That's a lot of jobs, people. That's 5% of its workforce in 2014. So, ouch. That'll be an interesting one to watch and to see. Hopefully we'll find some exciting companies coming out of those people.
It's always interesting to me from a business standpoint to think about a company that just made $9.6 billion in profit for the year is cutting 5,000 jobs.
Yeah.
Now, if you only look at that metric, it's like you start to maybe have negative feelings towards what Intel is doing. But at the end of the day, like, these are managers and these are executives that are, looking forward to 2014, 2015, 2016 and trying to, cut costs where they're going to have to cut costs because margins are going to get smaller here. It's still interesting, right? So they had what was it? Year-over-year change of 16%, I guess. 16% down. No, that's not right. What am I looking at here? Yeah. Okay, there's that table. Yeah, 16% lower year-over-year change. So, they're still making a ton of money,
Yeah.
especially compared to what AMD talked about, right?
Right. Well, it's funny. Like there's Lawn Dog just posted in the chat room. Quote, do you think Intel predicts that chip sales are going to experience a downturn for a short period of time, and that's why they're laying off people? And it's like, well, PC sales have definitely dropped over the last few years as people are starting to buy tablets instead of laptops or desktops. So yeah, I think they're probably anticipating a reduction in the number of PC sales. Or maybe I'm guessing that they're looking at that, or maybe they have other businesses that are closing out. I mean, WiMAX didn't turn out to be a big hit for Intel. The television startup didn't turn out to be a big hit, although they apparently have sold that division and offered Verizon is supposed to offer all of its employees employment at the as part of their agreement for purchasing it. It's an interesting thought. If they're expecting the market to continue to contract and they're just trying to stay ahead of that before they end up in any kind of financial problem. Although the idea of a company that made like $9.6 billion having financial issues or cleared like $5 billion in profits or $9 billion in profits is kind of staggering to consider. But it'll be interesting. While we're talking about financials, Scott wrote this up for PC Per. Is AMD showing decent recovery? They made $89 million, which is a lot better than losing money. But let me go back to that. Intel cuts 5% of its workforce after, because I'd love to make $89 million in profit. But let me run this down. PC Group, $33 billion at Intel. $9.6 billion in net income for Intel in 2013. AMD managed $89 million in profits. And that accounts for interest payments on loans and everything else. Scott adds $103 million gain in operating income, although that still apparently works out to a loss of $74 million for the year, all things considered. And I think to put that into perspective, Scott does a brilliant job where he points out, quote, this is a hefty turnaround from their $1 billion operating loss of last year. And apparently it was all about graphics and visual solutions. So go GPU crew at AMD. Are you feeling better about AMD, or you still worried about AMD?
I'm still a little worried. I feel better. I think they've done a good job on the GPU side. They had obviously the hiccups with the 290 and 290X, but financially, I think they've done they've done well with those two products. On the APU side, I think Kaveri is a good part. It's a little bit lower performance than we were expecting, but the investments that they have made into HSA the heterogeneous systems architecture and what that means for general computing besides just gaming, not just better graphics performance, but what else can you do with it, I think will pay off soon. I just, what is happening is as this process is being stretched out, the window of opportunity that AMD has to have an advantage over Intel in this area is shrinking, right? So I still think they will have an edge for a certain amount of time once very popular software becomes mainstream that takes advantage of HSA. I just don't think it's going to be, as long as they had hoped, right? They've had these plans for HSA in the works for quite a while. Intel has been mostly silent on it, but slowly but steadily beefing up their GPU portion, and they can do things like add 128 megs of cache onto the chip because they have all this extra capability in manufacturing, right, to make up for any maybe potential performance deficits that their architecture might have over what AMD's is. So it'll be interesting to see how long that goes, but hopefully we'll see some revolutionary new AMD architecture that'll be higher performance, lower power, and it will save everybody. I don't know if that will happen, but hopefully.
We would like everyone to be saved, including the 5% at Intel. Speaking of saving things, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a huge fan of our sponsor this week, iFixit.com. It's a free online repair manual for everything. They have free step-by-step repair guides. They are foolproof. I've used them to repair iPhones, iPads, MacBooks, and they have broadened into literally putting it together. iFixit's like an environment where you can learn how to repair anything, fix all your stuff. If you shattered your laptop screen, you need to repair your game console or swap the battery on your tablet or smartphone, iFixit has got you covered. They have 10,000 repair guides for everything from electronics like your smartphone and tablet, game consoles, home appliances, clothing, even your bike, people. They can hook you up with the parts you need to fix it, and everything they sell is tested and guaranteed. I own a couple of iFixit toolkits. They make good stuff. They also make the most trusted repair tools for consumer electronics, including the ProTech Toolkit. And I don't know if there it is. $64.95, people. 70 tools to assist you with any mod, malfunction, or misfortune that comes your way. It is the gold standard for electronics work, from garage hackers to the CIA and FBI. But let me tell you something. These are really good tools. They're used by repair technicians everywhere. It includes iFixit 54-bit driver kit, which has 54 standard specialty and security bits, including those irritating little pentalobe screwdriver bits that Apple now puts on all products, and Phillips bits for small and large electronics, Torx security bits. It's the Torx bits with the holes inside of them, Tri-Wing bits for video game consoles, triangle bits, because, sometimes you want to play around with McDonald's toys. Seriously, this kit has a bit for everything and a very nice swivel top precision screwdriver I reach for just about every week here in the office. And it's got this crazy little flexible extension. You can see that right there. Actually, that's the screwdriver you're looking at there on the screen. And the flex extension allows you to reach those really awkwardly located screws, like in the corner of a case when you're trying to screw a motherboard down without tearing everything apart. ESD safe precision tweezers, if you need to move things around without tearing things up, anti-static wrist straps, nylon spudgers, metal spudgers, plastic opening tools for prying and scraping. They've got a really nice tool row in there. It's a spudger, by the way, you're looking at right there. That is a prime tool for manipulating expensive phones and getting them open. This is good stuff. The tool roll is really nice because it means it basically takes up no space in a drawer. All your tools are kept in one place, safe and clean, and it is only, people, $64.95, and it is backed by a 1-year warranty. It's good stuff. You can use it to fix doorknobs, eyeglasses, cabinet doors, sinks, fixtures. I've used it on my car. I've used it for consumer electronics. And, you need a little something to deal with the smaller screws and bits and electronics in your life. Definitely check out the ProTech Toolkit. We mentioned it before. There are thousands of free iFixit guides to help you put your tools to use. People, check out iFixit and check out the ProTech Toolkit. And by the way, got a deal for you. For $10 off your purchase of $50 or more, go to ifixit.com/twit and enter the code TWICH, TWICH, at checkout. Not only will you score yourself some incredibly useful parts or repair one of your incredibly expensive electronics devices that's not working properly. I've bought screens off of iFixit. I've bought phone screens off of iFixit. I've replaced phone parts. It's good stuff. They keep an eye on it. The quality is excellent. And if you enter in Twitch, when you go to ifixit.com/twit, you get $10 off your purchase of $50 or more, and you'll be supporting This Week in Computer Hardware. So please support our sponsors like ifixit.com. And remember, ifixit.com/twit and enter in the code TWITCH when you check out. So we want to thank them for sponsoring this week's episode of This Week in Computer Hardware. Speaking of Twitch, twitch@twit.tv is the email address, and we love your questions. Ryan and I are always looking for just any excuse to build our knowledge and challenge what's left of our minds after all of the product testing in the end of the week. And I'm still, by the way, you weren't here last week. I may have gotten a little deep on Google's, contact lens. I thought that was fascinating. The strangest and most wearable technology. Oh, yeah. Computers in your contact lenses flashing you to let you know that things are out of balance with your insulin. I gotta tell our sitter about that.
Good in moderation, perhaps.
It's telling you Skynet, Google, practically. I'm telling you, that's where it's coming from. We got an email from Patrick, not me. Patrick out in the audience about an APU upgrade. He says, I have started ordering parts for a new mini ITX gaming system. Since I prefer AMD, it is limiting to me. Since I prefer AMD, it is limited to using an APU since there are no mini ITX motherboards with an AM3 socket. As such, I am waiting for the Kaveri launch and plan on picking up whatever the top-end Kaveri APU there is. That said, I'm also on a budget and was wondering what kind of performance you expect to see from top Kaveri APUs. What would be the equivalent from AMD's GPU lineup? Would it be worth getting an R9 270X to go with it, or will I not see much of a performance difference compared to the Kaveri? If yes, what 270X would you recommend most? Noise is not an issue. Gaming-wise, I'll mostly be playing older games, Dishonored, Batman series, Borderlands, Saint Row, and so forth. PJ. System specs for this build: BitPhoenix technology case, the ASRock FM288X ITX Plus, the Kaveri top-end APU, AMD's Radeon Gamer Series 16 gigs of RAM. And then the big question mark, of course, is not an SSD or Windows 8.1, but the GPU. I venture to say that a 270 should be a bit of an improvement performance-wise for the native graphics on the Kaveri. I'm just gonna lay that out there.
Yeah, the 270X is going to be significantly faster than the performance you get on APUs. So what's that?
Like 3 times the performance or double the performance?
I would say probably 3x would be my initial guess. So yeah, I mean the performance between those two is not really comparable. The Kaveri APU is going to be good for 1080p or lower gaming at medium to low image quality settings, right? And targeting 30 frames per second, right? So you're going to be able to do some stuff. But if you want to game, and he's talking about, games like Saints Row, games like Dishonored, the Batman series in particular can be pretty heavy on your GPU. The 270X is going to be a worthwhile improvement. He said he wants to stick with AMD, which is fine. The Kaveri APU as a processor with, not utilizing the GPU portion of it will be just fine. It will run those games. It will not be as fast as if you bought like an Intel Core i5 Haswell-based part, but it's a completely capable part. The only thing I guess I would maybe tell you to do is look at some of the CPU benchmarks and see if the performance delta from a 7850 going down to say the A8 7600 is going to be, if there's not a lot there, then you're saving $60. Like a third of the processor cost could be useful, because really what you lose from the 7850 down is a lot on the GPU side too. If you're not taking advantage of the integrated graphics, then you might be willing to save some more money to get almost as good CPU performance. There's definitely going to be differences there, but it may not be that much. I would say ideally the best combination would to put that 270X with like a Core i5 mini ITX platform. But if you want to stick with the AMD, the Kaveri one will work. And he's right. There's not really, I don't think there are any mini ITX AM3 motherboards, at least none that I've seen. So yeah, I think if you're gaming on those types of games, you're going to want a discrete card. So a 270X would be perfect for that. He didn't say what resolution. I'm assuming 1080p. on it as well. But mini ITX builds are all the rage. We've received more mini ITX cases, I'd say, in the last 90 days than in the last 90 months. So
that's a big deal.
They're popular.
They're small. They're convenient.
They are.
We got an email from Jonathan about Phenom versus Kaveri. He says, I have a computer with a Phenom X6 1090T overclocked to 4 gigahertz and a Zotac AMP GTX 670. I want to do an upgrade this year and replace the motherboard and processor. I want to keep the 670 for at least another year. My question is, would it be worth upgrading to the AMD A10 7850K? Will this be the highest performing CPU AMD will release this year? I didn't upgrade to an FX series CPU because from what I've seen, the performance gain was not so much. And from what I've read, there will be no more FX series CPUs. Good question, Jonathan.
Yeah, so this might be sad, but I'm going to look real quick because I would guess, yeah, I was right, that the Phenom X6 1100T, that's the one he said he had, right? 1090T, that's fine. If he's got it overclocked to 4 gigahertz, is going to be a faster CPU than Kaveri today. For example, Kaveri A10 7850K on Cinebench 11.5, full multi-threaded capability score is 3.59. That score is 5.83 with the Phenom X6. This has been a problem for AMD for a while, since they even went to the bulldozer architecture, right? Is that it was never as good as the architecture they replaced it with, but they had already committed. They couldn't go back. And so that's why before the end of life of the Phenom 2X6 parts, their prices actually went up because people were trying to buy those instead. They wanted to keep with their AMD platform, and they didn't want to lose performance at the same time. So, and keep in mind that score that I'm looking at is from December of 2010. Okay, and that's with a 3.2 gigahertz Phenom X6 part at 3.3 gigahertz. So he's got his overclocked quite a bit higher than that. And Kaveri is going to be lower. He says he wants to upgrade and replace the motherboard. He wants to I don't know. I don't think if you're going to keep your discrete card, I do not think upgrading to a Kaveri APU is the right option for him. I hate to say keep the part you've got forever, but it's just, I mean, it's just going to be a faster CPU. Right. Kaveri's not bad, but the Phenom X6, he doesn't say Phenom 2 X6. I'm going to assume, I don't know if they made a Phenom X6 of the singular portion, but I guess I can look. No, I only see Phenom 2 X6s. So I would not upgrade it. I mean, that's just me. If you want to do an upgrade and you want to replace the motherboard and processor, you could go with a Haswell part. That will be faster than the score you get, you know, with your Phenom 2X6. For example, if I look at the 4770 on Cinebench, my guess is that that's going to be quite a bit faster than that. Where am I at? Yeah, 8.12, right? So you jump from 5 point something to 8 point something with the move from the Phenom X6 to the Haswell 4770K. That's kind of where we're at, right? You could also look at if you want to stay in the AMD realm, you could look at the AM3 Plus parts. So the 9590, which is very hot, power consuming part. But it's faster. Let me see what its score is. Its score is like, nope, that's wrong. Hold on. I almost said 300 and something. That was going to be bad. 7.87, right? So it's just a little bit slower than the 4770K based on just the raw CPU test there. So, I mean, those are some things to consider. The 1100T, especially if you overclock it, is still very competitive with Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, and Haswell and those mid-range parts. So I see no problem with him keeping that unless there's some motherboard feature or something that he is desperately missing out on, right? Maybe he doesn't have USB 3 on that board or wants to to expand into multiple GPU slots or something that board may not have, that there would be reasons for. But yeah, I don't know.
Sometimes you just got to walk away.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. It's like you go and you compare it to the competition. You go, mine's still pretty good. Save some money, maybe upgrade that graphics card instead. You can see performance improvements in that area for sure. Or wait for the next generation of stuff and then use that money then. I don't know.
One last question before we go. Tommy has a question about the Dream system. He says, first, thank you for all your expertise over the years, and shout out to Patrick for giving me a college education since the Tech TV days. You're welcome, Tommy. I hope it was a good college education. He says, I'm building my first PC. Excellent. My main use is Photoshop and video along with my advanced music collection. I like the Dream system, but I'm looking to the future of Haswell Thunderbolt. At least 32 gigs of Ripjaws, GTX 780 Ti for dual monitors, 4K future option, 1200 watt power supply, the best stereo options. I have Sennheiser headphones and need an amp and a cooling system because I'll be moving to Hawaii and won't have air conditioning. Overclocking may be a future option. Is there anything I can combine between the Dream and high-end system to meet my needs? I was just talking to one of the people I work with earlier today, and I was making the point that there is just the idea of future-proofing a PC is a fool's errand.
Yeah.
If you are going to buy dual monitors, fire up that GTX 780. If you are not going to be buying dual monitors, you may want to go with a less expensive card, then add a second card in later on. It's Photoshop video editing. That's an excellent place to go with 32 gigabytes of RAM. In terms of Haswell Thunderbolts, I don't think it has a real long life, even on the Macintosh side of things. I might be proven wrong on that, but I think the cost of the cable, the performance versus USB 3.0, and the lack of massive support, the fact that Apple has adopted USB 3.0 is a strong sign that Thunderbolt isn't going to be as awesome as we thought it was. That said, we saw some demos running at CES that were absolutely fantastic in terms of taking advantage of Thunderbolts, and especially Thunderbolt 2's performance. In terms of the best stereo option, I'm actually testing out a really cool external DAC called a Dragonfly right now for Techzilla. And this is from a company called AudioQuest, and it is an amazing piece of engineering. It's basically a $150 external USB device. The original Dragonfly is now selling, the Dragonfly 1.0 is now selling for $100. When it originally launched, it was $250. Now it's $100, and they have the 1.2 version that's selling for $150. This is a fantastic sounding piece of hardware for the money. There are also some great Asus Zonar audio cards that I would highly recommend that are PCI Express cards that'll go inside of your machine. 1200 watt power supply, probably overkill. By the way, there's a built-in headphone amplifier in the Dragonfly, which is really nice. And the cooling system, may not be as critical as you think it is. You just need a decent air cooler. The inexpensive air coolers are actually doing a pretty good job, even compared to some of the water coolers out there. And the truth is as long as the ambient temperature is below the the temperature of the CPU, you're going to be getting cooling out of that. I mean,
yeah.
If you plan on storing it in a closet in Hawaii that is on the sunny side of the house, then I'd start thinking about some interesting stuff with water cooling. But I would probably aim for the high-end system, and then over the next year or two, as you move to a 4K monitor, then look at upgrading. But if you don't need all of the processor and memory and GPU, you probably shouldn't buy all of the processor and memory and GPU, especially if you've never moved to Hawaii before. Let me warn you right now, food is expensive in Hawaii. When you're sitting there looking at like a $10 box of cornflakes going, what? And everybody else, all the locals are looking at you like, yeah.
Anytime you live on an island somewhere, that's going to be the case.
Yeah, an island, it's a long, long way from land. The Dream system is fantastic. If you need to,
I was gonna say it's interesting. He mentions moving to Hawaii and worried about clock and overclocking stuff. I just sent a message to some of the guys here asking if we should do a video tomorrow on overclocking the R9 290X with its reference cooler outside here. Since when I woke up this morning, it was 4 degrees outside, and I was like, "Yeah, this would be a good demonstration for people about the difference in what ambient temperature can do to performance of a variably clocked processor."
Yeah,
I think it'd be interesting. But they express concern over reintroducing said component into a heated room and moisture, that kind of thing. So we'll see what we decide tomorrow.
Yeah, let's see. Average daytime summer temperature at sea level is 85 degrees in Hawaii. Average daytime winter temperature is 78 degrees. I wouldn't worry a whole lot about the temperature in Hawaii. I mean, compared to like the temperature in Arizona, like Arizona in August,
yeah,
that's hot.
Austin was hot when I was there, 106, 108 degrees very often. But those people have air conditioning. In Hawaii, I know they tend to not. So,
well, 85 is not
have fun in Hawaii, I guess.
Yeah,
have fun in Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say, like, man, do you really want to spend all that money on a computer and be inside while you're living in Hawaii?
Just buy a surfboard. You don't need computers.
I'm just saying. Seriously, though, if you're looking at the Dream system and it seems like too much, I would go with the high-end system. And, you know, if you're doing high-end video editing and photo editing, throw more memory at it, throw an SSD at it. I would worry a lot more about that than I would about a high-end GPU. Because I'll be honest with you, like 60 hertz 4K gaming monitors that are affordable, I feel comfortable in saying that those prices are a little, you know, that's end of 2014 best case scenario. And watch now, there's going to be like a 4K Cat Leap 60 hertz monitor tomorrow, right? That would be perfect, but don't spend a lot of money now trying to future-proof a PC, because you're going to look at those hundreds of extra dollars you spent, and you'll be able to buy more performance with that money, you know, 6 months or a year or two from now.
Agreed.
Call me old-fashioned, call me conservative. Just don't call me late for dinner. I don't think I've ever made that joke before. And I'd like to apologize to Ryan and the entire Twit community and Twitch audience for making it. Techzilla.com is a place to find me. I'm going to be doing a Techzilla bite on the Dragonfly DIY try-in this week. We did a urine-powered battery. What I didn't realize is Bill Gates is actually bankrolling a real product that is a urine-powered battery, but Michael and I actually made a battery that runs on salt water, or for the intrepid emergency prepper type community, you can actually pee on the pile of chemicals we put together and generate enough power to charge a phone. I have the video to prove it.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
I was amazed when that actually, like, oh my goodness, it worked.
You're going to ship a funnel with it, just, you know, so it's cleaner?
I you know, I was very not squeamish. Watch the video, man. I'm not.
Fair enough.
DIY Trying is the website. We're building a gaming PC next week. One of our coworkers has 200 Steam games and hasn't had a gaming PC for like 2 years, so we're going to fix that. PC Per, what's coming up on PC Per this week? GPU reviews?
So we've got, I finally got in AMD, the A10 7850K, so the high-end Kaveri processor. We already looked at the mid-range A8 7600. So we'll see what CPU performance deltas there are, as well as GPU performance deltas with that new part. We're going to test some dual graphics out and see if AMD has maybe fixed dual graphics yet. I don't know. We'll see. So that'll be an interesting little thing. And then we're going to compare. We're doing a lot of stuff with the Kaveri APU this week. I'm kind of seeing like what discrete GPUs are on the market that it makes irrelevant now, right? So is it faster than an NVIDIA GT 620 or GT 630 or GT 640, right? At what point, you know, does this $170 APU now make us an $80 or a $90 graphics card purchase unnecessary? So it'll be interesting to see where that line actually starts at.
I think it will be. Ladies and gentlemen, PCPer.com is the website. At Ryan Shrout is his Twitter address. I'm at Patrick Norton, and you can find me doing strange things at Techzilla or at techzilla.com is the place to find the video I make. Man, it's been a long and exciting day, and I'm still just kind of awe-inspired and excited that AMD has made money in Q4. Go AMD.
It's good stuff. It's good.
We like it. Yeah. OCZ has a new lease on life.
Yep.
Toshiba has a new forward-facing consumer brand, and you love the Lenovo.
It's all good news. It's all good news this week.
How did that happen? That's just
it's
okay.
almost,
Actually, I don't know.
There's 5,000 people that lost their job at Intel, but the company made money. So
well, and there was the whole sort of time to walk away from the FX processor. That was kind of the low point.
This was mostly a good week, mostly good news week. We'll go with that.
I predict brimstone and hellfire on next week's episode of Twitch.
I'll see what I can find.
I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.